meeting of the Oregon Public Library Board on Wednesday, November 8th to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Stata.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Goblin.
Here.
Bergstrom.
Here.
Bonsonfield.
Here.
And Reese and Beshan. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I would entertain a motion to adopt or amend the agenda.
I'll move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Coral. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jenny. All in favor of having an agenda?
Aye.
And opposed? All right, we have an agenda. Any community input this evening?
She's smiling.
Hearing none. Let's move on to the consent agenda. Looking to amend or approve minutes from our October meeting?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes from October?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Review and payment of available bills, and let's accept financial reports at the same time, if we may.
I just have one item to note on the expense report. We received the Tri-North Pay App just before yesterday, so kind of at the last minute, but it's not because they were late, it's just because of how the meeting dates fell in the calendar month. There was less time for them to prepare that. So as a matter of fact, this Jeff Vine reviews that, and then so does the architect before payment is issued. So it is possible that the amount that is paid is less than that. So I would just ask that you approve that line item up to that invoice amount with, I guess, conditioned upon Jeff's approval of whatever the final amount is. So if Jeff, determines that the invoice amount should be less and works with Tri-North to get to a different amount, then that invoice amount would be paid. That may be a little slightly less than that invoice number in your updated packet. Are there any questions on that item?
Is there,
I'll move to review pay bills and accept financial reports.
thank you, Jenny. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Coral. Any discussion?
Anything else to agree on?
No, I'm happy to answer any questions. So.
Any questions? Hearing none. All in favor of reviewing payment of bills and financial reports?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to building project change order number 7.
So Jeff, would you just be able to highlight the items in the change order for the board so they understand what's going on?
I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, sorry. So it's ridge vent modification, elevator room, door changes, and book drop.
Okay, what was the first one?
Ridge vent modification.
Okay, so that was a small change. There was some details at the very peak of the roof where we have some metal roof vent that goes with our shingle system, and we had to add some complexity to that. So there was some additional costs from the roofing subcontractor for that. The elevator equipment room, because of the type of elevator that we have, the subcontractor Schindler didn't need to have some space that was planned in our large conference room on the second floor. So we eliminated that room, and that resulted in a credit for the closet, the door, and there was some HVAC cooling equipment in that room. What was the next one on those?
An app for door change and the app for the book drop.
The door changes was, we have some doors that were scheduled in error as painted, and we wanted them to be stained because they're right out on the common area, and I think they were on second floor, so very visible in where they were located. And so we switched them to stained, and there was a fairly significant cost, but we think that was the right thing to do because it certainly wasn't planned to have the lower cost painted doors in that location. And then the book drop, we had a custom extension made for that. Right now, when you go through the existing library, it's like your car is 3 inches away from the wall trying to get into the book drop. And at the new library, we have some masonry, and then there's actually a curb. So we extended the book drop out from the face of the building to make it easier for people to reach. And so there was some cost to make that extension and closure. So.
Are there any questions for Jeff on the change order?
would entertain approval of the change order.
So moved.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the change order number 7?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Building project report and schedule from Jeff.
All right, so I was here not too long ago. And there was a couple of things that we were still kind of concerned about that were big picture, but we're kind of down to the final finish. So, you know, one of the things was the electrical service, you know, things that would be kind of fatal to us not being able to open when we want to open. One was the electrical service, which showed up a little early and is in and is done. And that allowed the elevator contractor to start, which would also, we wouldn't be able to get occupancy for the building without the elevator. And they're there working and are going to be done soon for that. And then other things that are kind of critical, exterior concrete work and all of the asphalt is all done now as well. So, you know, non-critical things on the exterior are landscaping, is basically what's left out there, and they're actually fairly far along with that. And then inside the building, things that are happening, you know, we have walls, ceilings, we have doors, we have hardware, we have all the cabinets and casework and all those types of things. So it's down to final flooring, but the flooring's about, I'd say, 50% complete right now. And then it's just finished things, you know, small pieces of hardware, you know, getting AV systems and data and communications and all those types of things. So the main structure of the building itself is nearing completion, and then it'll be this kind of final detail stuff, and it'll be punch lists. There's some things that we're having to correct here and there, but the goal is to have Tri-North completely out of the building by Thanksgiving. And I think for the most part, we're on track for that. I'm sure there'll be guys running around with a ladder trying to figure out, you know, why there's a wire hanging out of the ceiling over here that needs to connect to something after that point. But what it allows us to do is get Jennifer scheduled for everything that she has scheduled for move and new furniture that's coming and all of the kind of the owner stuff. So we need to get the contractor out. We need to take the space so we can move all of our stuff in and get all of our systems working. And by the third week or whatever date that you have picked, that will be able to open to the public towards the end of December. You know, if we get Tri-North out before Thanksgiving, it gives us that month of owner stuff, and then it allows for any other last minute delayed or punch list type things from Tri-North too, so that we're ready at the end of December. So.
How long does the punch list usually take to resolve once they are done with the building? What's the typical amount of time to punch list, to address punch list items?
I don't know, you know, it's gonna be kind of a continuous thing starting now that, you know, we're going through and finding corrections, but it should be, you know, a handful of people, a couple of weeks. And so if we have a couple of folks running around in December, that would be okay, taking care of small items, so. I think that's gonna overlap with what we're doing. I don't think it's gonna hold us up.
What other questions, does anybody have any other questions for Jeff on progress or what to expect as we move forward? No?
When are you gonna take them on a tour?
They had a preview tour, but we're gonna try to do another tour. We're just staying on Tri-North's way with the flooring and stuff.
Yeah.
So we'll probably do one, something after Thanksgiving for staff and
Sure.
boards again.
It's getting kind of exciting to see the finishes. Like to be out there on a sunny day and look out the window towards the, you know, the view out the back of the building. It's just fantastic. So I think you'll all be pleasantly surprised.
That's great. Could you just spend like 1 minute highlighting occupancy and how that works and what that means, or what we need to know about that for folks that aren't familiar with that process?
Sure. So I guess there's two levels of us being able to use the building. One is, you know, this month of December thing that we're talking about, that we can get we can move, we can have library staff over there, we can start working on, you know, building function systems and all that kind of stuff. And so we have to have the building to a point where the building inspectors okay with us being in there, and then it just has to be completed enough for us to start those activities, and I think we'll be okay with that. But as we start nearing towards wanting to have the public in the building, then we're gonna have to have actual occupancy from the building inspection department and final approvals from all of the inspectors. So there's an electrical inspector, there's an MEP inspect, a HVAC inspector, there's a fire protection inspector, and then we've got the building inspector. And, their job is to come through and make sure all those systems are up and running the way that they should be. So it'll be things like, does our fire alarm, smoke alarm system work? Do we have all of the type of life safety egress stuff going on? Like I was saying, if we don't have the sidewalks that are required to get the public to a certain point away from the building for safety, we wouldn't be able to open the library if we didn't have those types of things in place. So it has a lot to do with life safety. The sprinkler system needs to get approved and up and running and all of those types of things. But we're hoping that in the next week and a half, that Trinor is able to get approval for those types of things. The elevator is another one that we need to get a final inspection for the elevator from a specific elevator inspector. So if we can get those things knocked out, before the goal of getting Tri-North done by Thanksgiving, well then obviously we have time in December for anything that's kind of a whoopsie, but I think they're gonna have occupancy and be pretty much done before the end of November. So we shouldn't be in jeopardy of being able to open when we want to open. So.
Thank you, Jen.
All right. Nothing else? No other questions?
No. Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Library director's report.
So we got notice from the USDA today that the $1 million grant got obligated. So that's good, but
There's still more.
there's still additional steps once it's
Is there a
obligated.
flow chart that tells you all the
No.
Oh, dear.
There's
Video
additional-
of it, that'd be awesome.
It's just from experiencing pain in the past. That's why you kind of you get really excited and you're like, okay, what's next?
So there's additional paperwork and forms and agreements that need to be completed now, which they will provide at a future date. So I'm going to be annoying by email in hopes that we can get that before November 16th in case there's a government shutdown. But we would like to get as much of that done as possible. The one advantage with the waiver that we had to get, because our project was already under construction, was that we have already submitted a lot of that, like our contractual documents, and I mean, we've submitted extensive documentation to get to this point, so that I'm hoping we'll check the majority of the boxes, but it's just a matter of them reviewing it to retroactively to make sure they have that documentation, and then what additional documentation moving forward. I had asked, when we submitted the obligation papers, I said, we need these forms, when does this need to be done by? And they said, well, that's the next step, we'll provide that at a future date. So they're very kind of regimented in terms of what step you're at. So the village board did discuss on Monday night the possibility of doing a short-term loan if needed to borrow that amount while we can navigate the process. So the village board did approve that, and so they're gonna work with the bank to get everything ready. That could be executed at a December meeting. If we find out that it's not needed, they could skip it or potentially postpone it and only execute that and do it if we need to. Obviously, we don't want to borrow money and then just have to repay it back later. It's just not ideal, but we also want to make sure we can meet our financial obligations and not adversely, have any challenges that way. So it's trying to be proactive for it and working hard to navigate the CDS process, but just without knowing exactly how long that will take, and then the potential of a government shutdown, potentially, even if it were a quick process, that could delay things. I'm just wanting to make sure we have all our ducks in a row so that we can take care of the bills in the meantime. They say it only takes 2 days to get reimbursed once you submit your final payment. We just have to get to that point. So, are there any questions on that? Lisa Novinsko, the finance director, and Martin Shanks have been really helpful in trying to navigate that. But again, we're hoping that that's not necessary, and we'll keep you posted once we know more. If for any reason the funding did not come through, the village board did approve borrowing that extra $1 million, but did not borrow it this year as authorized, just because it would be silly to borrow money that the agreement with them said that if we get this funding, it would be deducted from the borrowing. And with the information that we had at the time, knowing that it was designated, it didn't make any sense to borrow the funds, knowing that there was a high likelihood that they would not be needed. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to talk about that. We posted the teen librarian position that we have, and we're hoping to, we have interviews that we're planning to do that in very early December in hopes that we can get somebody on board as close to the new year as humanly possible. The Friends of the Library were here recently. We do have a tour of the new library scheduled for them, so we can kind of answer some questions that they had and show them some of the spaces that they'll be working with. Our whole management team has been working really hard on preparing for the move, you know, in different ways, organizing things, creating checklists, preparing other staff. So I just want to recognize them and all the hard work that they're doing to kind of help prepare our staff. Laura already has our storage rooms cleaned out, so that's usually the last thing to be done, and so that's already done. It'll make moving a little bit easier. So really appreciate them and all that they're doing to make that happen. Earlier today, we had the Village Appreciation Luncheon for employees. We did close. The library board has authorized that we can close if we wish to allow as many employees as possible to attend. Often there's employees who do not wish to attend, and then we keep the library open. This year there was a significant number of people going, which was great. We recognized 5 people, including Laura, who was recognized for 15 years at the library, so kudos to Laura. And then Patricia Bogalski, Kara Ripley, and Sam Canny were also recognized for 5 years. The other thing I want to mention is the village is working on their budget, so we'll talk a little bit about some of those items related to that later tonight. Their next budget meeting is on the 20th, and they would be expected to adopt a final budget on that date. Also, the Senior Center put out in their October, I guess it's their November newsletter that came out in October, just information about the new library, and if anybody had transportation concerns and felt like the new location would be difficult for them to get to, there was some information about how they could be put in contact with either the library or the Senior Center so that we can work with them to make sure that they have library services. So that's out there for anybody to respond to. And that is all I want to highlight. We also have a statistics report in your packet, I believe. And just one thing I want to note is that most of our self-check use has been very steady. We have about 3/4 of our checkouts for the first timer by self-check right now, and so that's something that we're looking at, getting a 3rd self-checkout machine, which you know, allows staff to be free to do other things or help patrons with more sophisticated questions. So that's something that we're hoping to get, but I'm not sure, depending on the project budget. So what questions are there?
I'd also like to congratulate you on being recognized for your
Did you notice that little slip that said?
I noticed.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Congratulations to everybody that was recognized today. That's great. Okay. Any other questions for Jennifer? Okay. Let's go on to village board announcements. Carlene's not here. Budget stuff. Is the biggest priority right now. Any school district announcements?
Trying to think something that would be library related, and that would be our high school equity book club is starting this week. We've done it for a couple of years. It's really, really fun and exciting. I've read some amazing books and then had an opportunity to talk about the book with students and staff and community members. And the one the students chose for the fall is Last Night at the Telegraph Club. So that is the one that we are reading as a community next.
Great, thank you.
That's on my bookshelf.
Moving on to 7A, library closure dates.
So this was added to the packet later by email. So you have a memo kind of in your packet explaining there's a number of things that have to happen once we take control of the building. We have to install our shelving, our office furniture, computers, internet, phone system, and then we have to move, and then we have to get our staff kind of used to how things are arranged, and then we have to catch up for being closed, and then we can open. And so looking at library closure dates, it's often between 2 and 4 weeks depending on the size of the library, the scope of the move, the complexity of the move, and things like that. One key is a library of our size, similar size. They were moving from a building almost identical to ours in size to a building bigger than ours in size, and they were closed for about 3 weeks. So what we're recommending is almost that same time frame. Our move is a little bit, the timing of our move isn't great because of the holidays, and so there's days that will be closed because of the holidays that make it seem like we're being closed longer. And then also, it's also a time of year where staff tend to desire to have off, to spend time with their families, and we want to make sure we can honor that. Because a lot of employees have limited time off, and we want to make sure they can do that. So it's a little bit, not ideal, but I have some days in here that I am proposing that we close. The last day we would be open per this proposal would be Saturday, December 9th, that we would close starting December 10th. We have movers hired starting the 11th. They're going to take 6 to 8 business days to help us move. And then we have a few business days to kind of get everything else in order. Do a step in service, troubleshoot anything that needs to be worked on. We have installs for additional items the week of the 18th, so anything that's not critical to moving will be installed later. So tables, comfy chairs, and things will come later. The donor wall is going to come right before Christmas, so that'll be installed when we open up. And so we kind of have to make sure that there's access to the elevator, and we're not having competing installers all trying to use the elevator at the same time. And so there's just a lot of pieces going on. Today we were reconfirming with the shelving installer to make sure that when they said they would bring it a certain time range that they really would, and I'm still not 100% confident that's going to happen, but I hope to have a firm answer by tomorrow. We kind of conveyed how important it was, because for us everything is like clockwork, planned out, and so a lot of folks don't perceive projects in the same way, and so they mean, oh, this day, and they think they can change the install dates or adjust, and it doesn't make an impact, but for us it really does. And so that's the one caveat. If any of the installers kind of aren't able to follow through on the timeline that they committed to us and confirmed with us previously, that creates a real domino effect. And most of the things can happen in a different order. Like if we get the comfy chairs before something else was in, it would be fine. But the movers are the kind of the critical piece. Because if they can't move, if there isn't places for them to put the books, they can't move. And then the next day they can reschedule us, isn't going to be till January. So that's kind of the one thing that makes me nervous, is that it's that domino effect, because it's so tightly scheduled. And we did that because we didn't want to have the building sitting empty for a long time, and we also didn't want to move in like late January or February when the weather is bad. We also have a deadline with BadgerNet that we have to be out by the end of January, because they're shifting their service, and so we have a deadline with that, and so there's lots of complicated pieces. So I think that we're at the point where we have to kind of announce move dates publicly because of all the pieces that go into that. And it sounds like from Jeff that the schedule will be achievable from Tri-North, and we're working with those other vendors to reconfirm everything and do the best we can to stay on track. But we don't have control over everything, so I'm just going to give you that caveat. The other thing is that no items will be due while we're closed, so nobody will have to worry about bringing things back, or we're also fine free, so if somebody weren't able to bring something back or bring it back late, they wouldn't be penalized. We have a slew of publicity ready to go to share with the community, so that to answer some of the questions they may have about getting their items, or where they can go to pick things up, or how that will be handled, the services that will be available while we're closed. We will be closing the book drop for a limited amount of time, just because we want to be able to have our staff focused 100% on moving things most efficiently, so we can make best use of the money we're paying for the movers. And then also because there's going to be a short time where we'll be transitioning between computer systems and networks and things, and that might mean that our computer systems will be unavailable, and so it's just a little bit better to do it more efficiently. So the dates that I'm recommending are 12/10 to January 4th. And then just to note that if we're really ready to open prior to that January 4th date, that we could do a soft opening, if we feel ready, but that we're able to stay close that duration if needed. Are there any questions?
I would entertain a motion to approve the closure dates of December 10th through January 4th.
May I move that?
Thank you, Jen. Is there a second?
Second. You go ahead.
Laura beat Jen.
That's right.
Any discussion? John?
I want to just say something really positive right here. When I went in Monday to pick up the packet, the staff is thrilled. The mood in the library is electric. They are so pumped. And wow, for our community, especially for the staff of the library, this is like so cool. So I just want to go on record saying kudos to everybody, and especially Jennifer. Thank you.
The other thing I think it's important to note is that that many things will be done in the way that they're going to be for a long time, but there are also those special little details that kind of continue to evolve. So we're trying to cover our bases and do as many of those as we can. So like we're trying to have some artwork installed. We're going to have the donor recognition plaques installed. But there's going to be kind of continuous effort putting into making that space special. So it's kind of like you move into a new house and you get unpacked and you're living there, but there's going to be more to kind of make it comfy. So we won't have all that done on day one, but if we waited until we were ready, we would be kind of missing an opportunity. So it's kind of that balance point between moving in and having as much ready as possible, but then also knowing that some of those things will kind of evolve as we have time to focus on them once we move too. So just kind of managing expectations, and we'll try to have information about what about this, so that if people ask questions about, well, I'd like to see this at the new library, we can kind of tell them, oh, that's coming soon, check back or what the status is of something like that.
Thank you. I would also echo what John was saying earlier, but thank you to you, Jennifer, for all of the puzzle pieces that you're putting together, and I'm sure there are many charts and everything with Post-it notes trying to figure this all out, so thank you for that problem solving, which is that puzzle moving, so thank you. So all in favor of closing December 10th through January 4th?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have a closure for moving. Moving on to declaration of surplus.
So there's just two items I would like you to address tonight. One is the Friends mentioned last time a number of items that they've been in possession of for a number of years, and I can't find a record that those items were declared surplus. So I'd just like to have you officially do that to recognize that if we gave it to them 5 years ago and we haven't been using them, and they no longer need them, that it would be time to allow those items to no longer be village property. And then also, one of the things that's difficult to find new homes for, specifically the shelving that we have, because it's very tall and well used, and then end panels are unique colors. Library shelving is more difficult to find a useful home for. We have a few library, Partyville I think is interested in some of our shelving, and so we would just like you to declare any shelving that we don't need in a new library to be surplus. A lot of those are specific heights, specific sizes and things, and so it's not something that can easily be moved because you have to have it all kind of fit in the right places. And so if we can benefit another library or community from those things that are eager to use it and save us trouble of getting rid of it, that's great. We talked to Baraboo, who did an auction and spent a lot of time on it, and the return on it wasn't great on that type of item anyway. So are there any questions on the surplus request?
To declare those items as surplus.
Thank you, Jenny. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Coral. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the declaration of surplus?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Library addendum to village employee handbook.
So earlier this year, the village did a wonderful and very significant update to their handbook to simplify, codify, and just make it more clear to employees and staff what village policies were. So they did a great job with that. That was back in May, and then at our June meeting, we approved that for library staff as well. With the expertise that went into it, it made sense to adopt those practices for us so we can be consistent with other village departments and to use their expertise in handling some of those items that are addressed. However, there are a few anomalies that don't really, the library doesn't quite fit into the village handbook. So this is just kind of an attempt to address the most obvious ones. There may be ones that we missed or that we'll discover moving forward that don't quite fit our situation. But we just kind of want to formalize that so there's no question that we're still following the rules and what those exceptions would be. For the most part, I don't think any of them are intended to be policy changes. It's just trying to compile any exceptions that the library board has adopted in the past all into kind of one place. The one exception to that would be the exit interview policy, in which I just kind of took what the village was proposing and just modified it for the library. So I took their language. And so in the past, we've had lots of options for people departing employment. We like to conduct an interview with all departing employees. In the past, the option would be the library director, the employee supervisor, and the library director, or the personnel committee. And so to follow what Martin had for the village employees, they only have the option of the village administrator, or they can submit their responses in writing, so they have fewer options. So we're kind of trying to continue the options that we've had before, and also give employees some recourse if they were unhappy with leadership or wanted to have a voice with somebody other than me or their supervisor, they would have that option. But I just want to point out that right now, as proposed in your packet, that the personnel committee isn't listed as an option, so I just want to throw that out there. I know some personnel committee members may have been part of an exit interview. I think that option has only been selected once since I started. It does require, one of the challenges is that does require a public meeting, because the personnel committee is a public meeting, and so then you either have to have a conversation in a public meeting, which is kind of awkward, or if you go to closed session, then there's kind of the perception of confidentiality, which makes it hard to share feedback and implement that. So that's just something to consider. It doesn't mean you can't do that. We can definitely continue to do that as an option if you'd like, but I just want to throw that out for you to react to before it gets approved. Because I wasn't necessarily trying to change it, it's just something that hasn't been used and isn't really parallel with what the village is offering. So it's entirely up to you how you'd like to handle that.
Could I ask the personnel committee their thoughts? I've never been to the personnel committee, so I don't know.
I have conducted one exit interview since being on the personnel committee. I think the only benefit there is if somebody is more comfortable offering that feedback in a different direction. But I think having the village administrator as an option is most likely also going to accomplish that. If you don't feel comfortable having that conversation with your direct supervisor or the library director, that I feel like the village administrator is an appropriately neutral party. And then I think there's language here that says that information gathered from the exit interview might be shared. And I think that's fair. I think that's probably where the personnel committee might have thoughts, is like having some of that information as we make decisions going forward. Laura, do you have different feelings?
I do not. Leslie?
Leslie? I feel the same.
The village administrator is an option right now for
Yeah,
us.
so that was the only option for village employees, so we kept that as an option, just thinking that there would be, if somebody was left under not ideal circumstances or just wasn't happy, that they'd have a choice about who to talk to.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the addendum to the employee handbook?
So moved.
Thank you, Coral. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, John. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the addendum?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, everybody. Moving on to background check tiers.
So this is something that is kind of addressed in the village handbook, but I wanted to kind of formalize how we handled it with different positions. The reason being is that it kind of has some general language about, you know, part-time positions or full-time positions that generally do these things. And since I've been here, I've only hired part-time employees. All the full-time employees that we've hired were promotions. So we had 2 promotions, and so those individuals didn't have the same background check as, you know, because they were already existing employees that worked a little different. So, so now we're hiring that full-time teen librarian, and it kind of doesn't quite fit with either section. So right now, since I've started, our part-time employees have only had a tier 1 background check. And the village kind of is practiced as a tier 2 for full-time employees who, you know, handle cash or anything of value, and then department heads have a tier 3. And so in fitting with that, they would have a tier 2 check, you know, for this full-time position, but that's also kind of a deviation from other non-managerial positions. And so it's kind of that gray area where we could really make a judgment call either way, and rather than me or a future director making a judgment call, it would be good just to say we want to do this in all future scenarios. The other reason that this came up is the village is kind of switching how this is handled. So prior to now, the PD had handled, the police department had handled all background checks. And they're now getting to a point where the village is going to be taking over all tier 1 and tier 2 background checks. In addition, they just made a change to the tier 2 background check, which was, you know, sometimes made me kind of pause about that one, is where they would contact current neighbors. So if we proceed with a tier 2, it would be what's listed here except for the neighbor contact. And so that was kind of the one that was kind of, you know, because the village is very thorough, and it's very important that we make sure that the people that we're hiring are going to be great for the library and community, but we also, you know, don't want to scare somebody away, because in the past it's taken a long time and it's very involved, and I think that the neighbor check kind of scares some people. But I think, you know, right now tier 2 is, you know, employers, which is appropriate. Credit history report is related to the money handling. The college transcript, you know, takes a little bit, but, you know, is reasonable. References, and a lot of things are the sex offender registry, the criminal history, civil judgment. So those things are, you know, I think reasonable. So I guess I'm a little bit more comfortable with the tier 2 now, but I just wanted to make sure we kind of threw that out to you, because I think, you know, we've had the PD is wonderful and they do a great job, but we had a new employee who said, the police department called my reference and they were panicking that something bad happened to me. So we've tried to change our...
I would, yeah.
So you see, so I guess basically I'm kind of have a recommendation that's trying to follow as closely as possible for the village practices, which would be all our part-time positions would be the tier 1, with Pages getting just a tier 1, and all of their part-time positions adding that credit check on. And then tier 2 would be any full-time library position, and then tier 3 would be the library director if you wanted to do something different. In the past, they haven't allowed you to deviate and like add or take things away, really. But I'm just going to open that up for discussion. It's entirely your call, so if you felt comfortable with a tier 1, we could just do tier 1 for full-time employees. But I just wanted to open it up for conversation tonight, because we're kind of starting into new territory moving forward. What questions or thoughts are there?
I think this makes sense. It seems to blend the village requirements with what we want to do, and I know we've been trying to kind of follow what we can with the village as much as possible, even though we can do different things. So it seems to make sense and seems fair for what their roles are, at least to me.
Any other comments or questions?
Some more background investigation than I've ever had for a job. It seems like a law enforcement background check or something.
Yeah, it
Nature,
seems
right?
very,
Or military.
very
yeah,
thorough.
It's
I mean, I'm not
really
saying that's
purpose.
bad, but like I have held some pretty serious jobs, and I don't think anyone has ever talked to my neighbor.
Hopefully we'll have to talk to the neighbors, I'm the new person.
But yeah, I think the good part is, as Jenny pointed out, that we are kind of aligning with the village.
So is there a motion to approve the recommended background checks for tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3?
So moved.
Thank you, Coral. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Laura. Any further discussion, comments, questions, concerns? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay. Moving on to the 2024 library budget.
So this is in your packet because we just finished the open enrollment period, and so one employee changed their election of what health insurance to take, which affected our budget numbers. And so, so I think I highlighted in yellow the one number that would be changing. At least I hope that's it. It doesn't highlight in my packet, so it's probably not highlighted in yours. But it's the only line that should be different would be the health insurance line, which would be account number
2355110-134.
That's correct. So that went up to accommodate switch from a single plan to a family plan for one employee. And all other numbers are exactly the same as last time, or as our budget request, last approved.
So is there a motion to approve the 2024 budget as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The 2024 salary schedule and staff wages.
And the village board will be meeting on the 20th to hopefully adopt their budget and their salary schedule and set employee wages. So for the library, it's a little bit more complicated because the library board has authority to set the compensation for library employees. It has been to our benefit to work in cooperation with the village as part of that compensation study, and has been beneficial in 2023 to adopt what they kind of recommend. They've been trying to make recommendations that across the board are applied as equitably as possible to employees, so that you know, what's good for one department is good for another department. And so I would be recommending that you adopt the 2024 salary schedule that they're proposing and the 2024 library wages that they're proposing. They'll also be adopting it, but as a village, they technically are only approving the overall total budget for us, and so you could choose to use the funds a little differently, but then next year when you went back to approve it, it might change how they approach your budget. But it is your authority to decide how to use it. But so I guess I'm recommending you approve those salary schedule and wages that they're proposing, and they will also consider at their meeting on the 20th.
Is there a motion to approve the salary schedule and wages?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Coral. Is there a second? Thank you, John. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we have a salary schedule. Wow, we are approaching the end here today. Our next meeting will be on December 13th here at the Senior Center at 5:15 p.m. And that will be after the library is closed to start moving. Is that our last meeting? Fingers crossed.
I'm not sure, because one of the things that we're still struggling to wrap up is the BadgerNet internet stuff, and one of the things they're hoping to do is set up a special ISP for filming of programs and things, and we haven't gotten to the point where we've been able to have those conversations now that we're actually to the point where they need to be set up. So we will have to just wait to make sure that we're in a place that OCA can record until we can be ready and make sure they have that.
That's good. Fingers crossed. Is there a request for any future agenda items? Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, John. Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.